roads and up in the clouds, but I've always felt that something's missing. That was until I found you right there in the crowd. You came into my life and started a fire. You made me feel like I could touch the sky. Oh, there's nothing missing now that you're my desire. Now all I have to do is to make you mine. 'Cause I know, and you know what we could be. Like a song, like a perfect melody. Baby, don't say you don't believe in me. 'Cause you know, and I know, we're onto something good. You know, and I know, we got something good.
Hello, how's it going? Bonnie Violet here. I'm a trans femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, and digital chaplain. And in case you don't know where you are, you found yourself at Say Something Sundays, where our special Pride edition, I guess, where I will be speaking on Grace is as Grace does. If you've never been here before, each Sunday I take a little bit of time and just speak with what's on my heart and my mind, what comes out of my mouth. Sometimes it sounds really great, and other times it's a little this, a little that. So we'll see how things go. Grace is as Grace does kind of is something I took from the movie Forrest Gump, which, you know, that statement, stupid is as stupid does. And I do want to say that that is not a word. It's a quote from Forrest Gump, but that really is not a good word to be used. It is a slur in some form. So one of the things that I think it speaks to is also just in the sense of it being pride and talking about the word queer. Oftentimes queer is also a word that we've kind of retaken and reclaimed and turned it into something positive or better. So I'm not saying that stupid is the same way, but maybe in this moment, within his particular experience, it made sense. But what I wanted to do was, when I looked at what the meaning of that was, or what he meant when he did say that is that I wrote it down, is that basically what it means is it's basically, he said that in the idea of like, you know, like don't judge by appearances, don't make assumptions about, you know, somebody's intelligence, basically, just by the outward appearance. And I think that, and then I was trying to think of grace, and I was trying to think of a topic, something catchy. And grace is a word that, grace is something that I would say that I have, one thing that I've sought and seeked throughout my entire life. And I've had different, have I had different understandings of it? I think that I've utilized grace and understood grace and tapped into grace differently throughout my life. But I do think that it's been one constant belief and one constant understanding. And for me, grace is something that cannot be earned, and it's something that is freely given. To me, it really comes down to, often it's about worth. And it's the idea that that you don't have to do anything or like in order to, like, you can't achieve grace. It's not something that you work toward or that you earn. It's something, again, that is giving to you. And I think for me, grace is difficult. It's the truth that I've always known, in the sense of that I do believe that we all are equal. We all have the same value and the same worth. As in, like, there's not one way, if you will, to experience grace, and then everyone has to do that in order to have grace. That we don't earn it. Again, we don't earn it, and we don't do certain things to achieve it, which is something that, as I said, I've kind of conflicted. You know, I think going to church, in a Christian church, you know, as a young person, grace was, you know, something that was given by God. It was kind of in relation to like sin and living, and kind of had those sort of connotations. And grace was something that was very difficult for me. I think there was the sense of like, there was a lot of things that I felt like made me less than or not worthy. Some of that had to do with just the growing up growing up in a family that didn't have a lot of money, I think I started to think that that had something to do with my value or my worth as a character, as an individual, as a person. Again, that's like, you know, that's kind of an appearance thing, right? That's kind of more of a perception. And again, I think kind of I had a conflicted and I think also deep, that was deeply related to my value and my worth. And so in the sense that I felt like it always put me in a place of less than. I also kind of felt like, I think even in the beginning of my religion and my understanding of religion was this idea that I was less than, and I had to continue to be good and do well and do good things in order to make up for, right, for all of the sorts of things. So for me, that's been a number of things throughout the years, but just in kind of speaking about queerness, or LGBTQness, I think that, growing up, and even trying to think like why grace is important to me. And I think I want to speak to it more like kind of the idea of grace coming back into my life. Grace is, it's a higher power concept, or it's like a belief, or it's something to kind of reach to. I have a really hard time living into the belief of grace. For whatever reason, a lot of my actions, a lot of my behaviors, a lot of the words that I've said to myself over the years have been contrary to this idea and this belief of grace. This idea that I don't have to earn, and I can't earn grace or worth. Like worthiness and value is just boom, we got it. It's not something we can earn more of or lose even. And so, but it's something that I've always felt like I wasn't worthy, I wasn't eligible, or there was something about me that kind of put me outside of. And I'm not liking where this is going so far. I've really been trying to get into a space of speaking, and I'm going to give myself some grace here, is like, I'm really wanting to try to live beyond what was and live into what is and what can be. So grace is something that, it was then, it's now, and it is always. And so for me, oftentimes, if I'm struggling with a certain relationship, or I'm just kind of struggling in general, grace is one thing that I can try to tap into in order to have a response, or to set with, or to be with like the difficult thing or the challenging thing. Grace is something that even when I struggled with having an actual relationship with God, that I could kind of get behind. Like I don't have to have God, if you will, or an understanding of God, or even the divine, to have this sense of idea of grace, and to take that sort of belief and understanding within myself, and to carry it and be out in the world as if I know that to be true. In my heart of hearts, in my core, I know it is true. And yet there are certain things that have happened to me, certain decisions I've made, certain things that have been said to me that continue to have kind of put me in a place of thinking that I no longer was eligible for grace, or living into that grace and that understanding became more and more difficult. I believe that I like the idea of like, you cannot transmit something you haven't got. So this idea that if like, how do I get something if I've never gotten it before? And grace is something that I think we often like talk about with like religion and church, but I received a lot of grace from my family as a young person, as a child, outside of the context of any sort of like spirituality or religion. My parents loved me and sometimes showed up for me with grace, and afforded me grace. Even though I didn't have the understanding. One of the other definitions for grace is has to do with the idea of generosity. So if asking the question, what is the spiritual meaning of the name grace? The name grace is of Latin origin, meaning goodness and generosity. In Greek mythology, grace refers to the three charities or graces, the goddesses of charm, beauty, and creativity. Grace is connected to the religious concept of divine grace, the love and mercy freely given by God. And that was pulled from a website, I think it was called compassion.com. Yeah, like I took notes to refer to, and I know that I typed it in there, but I think I'm not seeing it real quick exactly where it came from, but I'll put it in the description. So you should be able to find it after the fact. But in thinking of grace as generosity, generosity was definitely something that my parents taught me at a very young age and throughout my childhood. And to kind of think of grace as generosity or generosity as grace, I think can begin to show me how grace was, I guess, given to me in a way in which I could learn how, like, receive it and then transmit it. Where is my head with all of this conversation today? If you are with me live and you have any question or comments, please do put it in there now. And that also might help prompt me into going in the direction. It's funny how, like, sometimes I can try to orchestrate this so much and put so much planning into it that then when I go to do it, it just feels forced or I feel disconnected to it. So grace is as grace does. Let's see. I'm trying to really pull myself together on this. In talking about grace, trying to figure out where I'm going to go from here. I'm preaching this next Sunday on Father's Day in San Francisco, and the topic is queer grace. And as I started to say, grace is a higher power concept for me. To me, it's also represented with the number 333. Like, you can look even in my name behind me, you can see 333. And for me, that is, again, to really try to carry grace with me and that understanding of grace, that I do not have to do anything to earn my value or my worth, which, again, I don't know. I lived most of my life thinking I had to work harder and do more and even like save people, or like it was some sort of like earning points or earning value or earning worth. And I think it's very cultural. It's a cultural thing for us. I really want to just like stop and not do this anymore, just to be perfectly candid, with kind of me getting into my head. But I get the opportunity to speak a little bit more about grace. And as I said, it's something that kind of eludes me at times, though I think it's something that I've worked really hard to understand and to really live into. Oftentimes, Grace was actually the first name I was considering. Well, it was the first name I went by initially when I started transitioning. And to me, my transition is a spiritual awakening. And so at that time I saw it as like my spiritual name, or it was like my name when I was being of service in community as a chaplain, or even as a drag artist in the beginning. My first drag name was 333, which again was Grace. Yeah, and I think, again, I don't know where I'm going with all this. I keep seeing the numbers come and go, people pop in and out, and I'm trying not to let that get into my head. Last week I didn't see it, so I think that was helpful. But I think what I might do is, if anyone has questions or comments about Grace or want to say something, feel free to do that. Also, if you just have any questions, I'm kind of scrambling with I don't know, knowing what to say or what to talk about. I feel like I'm second guessing everything that comes out of my mouth, and kind of like the purpose, I guess, behind it. Um, I think I'm just going to be done early. Yeah. If you happen to come across this at a later date and you didn't join live, and you have questions or comments, please do leave them in the description under the video or whatever, and I will reach back out to you. I'm struggling with doing it today for some reason. And so please do leave comments. Join me next week. This Sunday, I'll be speaking on grace again at the church. And I think that was partially why I wanted to take a stab at talking about it today and talk about like grace, challenging of grace. I think I'm getting stuck in that idea that everything has to be done a certain way and the format has to fit this way. And whenever I go into new settings or new environments that I often sometimes feel like I don't fit in, and I feel like I have to be something that I'm not, when a lot of the times people select me or I find myself in these places because of who I am and how I am, not because I'm like everyone else, in the sense of like, if I'm preaching now, I'm thinking I have to have like, I don't know, like I don't know. I'm just getting in my head about how to like put it together and how to speak to it in a way that feels authentic to me and my experience, but also leans into being in that space and being with that group of people. I always try to take every speaking opportunity, every drag performance, every panel that I do. I really, and especially when I'm writing stuff or creating stuff, I really try to process different things through that. So I'm really wanting to try to speak into and begin speaking my narrative with grace and a fuller understanding of grace. In the way that I frame talking about people of my past, talking about situations and circumstances of my past, talking about things that I've done, to apply grace when I'm having difficulty with family members or with things that are left in the comments, or really like, how can I meet everything with grace? And I just cannot do this. I think I'm going to call it a day. Sorry for folks who popped in and it didn't quite click for you today or me. Again, reach out. I could really handle speaking with someone more about this stuff in general. I have been by myself for a couple of days, and maybe that could be a bit of the challenge, just feeling a little isolated and disconnected from things. But that's partly why I do this, is to try to connect and try to understand more of like where I'm at. So I think that's where I'm going to leave it. So if you're interested, I will be in San Francisco for the next 2 weeks, starting Wednesday, and then in Denver. And so I have a lot of things happening. Check out my website at aqueerchaplain.org to potentially see me at the events. It'd be great to see you all and connect with you all. And thank you for your continued love and support. Happy Pride, and bye-bye.